Hey, what's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today we're talking about Sacramento, California band Deftones, back again with their 9th studio album, Ohms, with the help of famed producer Terry Date via Reprise Records. And hey, if you like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Now, I really tried to avoid too much hype after my disappointment with the previous album, Gore, so I've been trying to kind of ignore stuff and not think too much into the singles and things like that, and I gotta say, you got me, Deftones. You really did. I enjoyed this album greatly as a whole, and I feel like it's on par with Koi no Yokan, which has over the years become one of my favorites, but it's definitely still less heavy than that one. Overall, this is a very synthy, atmospheric album that from my very first listen had me thinking about The Cure, right down to the album art with its minimalist, depressive vibe. Ohms even opens with a very lush yet eerie Robert Smith-worthy synth line. It courses through the appropriately titled Genesis like a life-bringing vein beneath the layers of skin and muscle that are Steven's chunky, ominous riffs and Chino's schizoid vocals. Admittedly, I wasn't sure at first what to think of the moody title track they dropped as the lead single, but over time that bouncy guitar hook has definitely wormed its way into my brain to the point that the two are now one and the same entity. Within context, there's no denying that this is the perfect closer for what's to come. Urantia is also on the synthy and atmospheric side, with Chino's vocals drifting along like fluffy white clouds on the horizon. It's this stunning, ethereal soundscape that builds into a cool little chuggy riff and rumbling bass that gives it a little bit of a quicksand vibe, I'm sure thanks in no small part to Sergio Vega. I also like the cool little interlude around the middle with the spoken word and electronic beat to further add to the dynamics. Another standout is the closing of Pompeii, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce this one. Aside from just being an overall haunting song, that 2-minute outro is one of the most tear-jerking things that the band has ever written, and its grandeur would be right at home on a Stanley Kubrick, David Lynch, or even Blade Runner soundtrack. And speaking of those names, there are also some darker sounds to find on Ohms, starting with Error. This one has very ominous overtones to offset another soaring chorus. Once again, Deftones prove themselves to be masters of balancing the light and shadow. The Spell of Mathematics is another one that's on the darker side of the spectrum, but still with that same through line of synth ever present in the background, in this context now sounding more like a looming phantom. The driving down-tuned main riff on this one feels like a spiritual successor to Tempest, with some notable work from Abe stepping up the intensity on the kit. Cool little snapping outro over the bass as well. This Link is Dead, aside from just being one of the heavier tracks on the album, also has this uneasy feeling during its duration. Something about how the dissonant guitars seem to build and ramp up to this shrieking peak alongside Chino's vicious vocal delivery, only to repeatedly start back over at the bottom each time, leaves me in this constant stasis of palpable anxiety. Sonic blue balls, if you will. I feel like Sisyphus eternally pushing the boulder up that hill, only for it to roll back down each time. It's not until the song's final minutes that we finally get that catharsis of tipping it over the edge in a satisfying explosion of 90s groove. And we also simply must talk about Radiant City. This is easily one of the main highlights of the album, and honestly, one of the best songs I think that the band has ever written. That opening bass line slaps so hard. I want to bottle that shit and chug it at the gym for those gains, bro. And then those sudden transitions from screams to the catchy as fuck optimistic chorus. Only Deftones can pull that off so seamlessly every single time. And as if that wasn't enough, Headless plays with a similar framework with the tension building and super head-bangable start-stop union of guitars and drums, leading into yet another launch into spiritual bliss. Overall, this is a huge step up from my disappointment with Gore. While it's still on the softer side of the spectrum overall, it's a return to the hooks and individual personality of each track that I love so much about Koi no Yokan. I give Ohms a 10 for enjoyability. From the head bobbers to the trance inducers, I am consistently in awe over its duration. I give it a 9 for musicianship. As usual, there are places here and there that left me with my own ideas of where the song could go, but never enough to detract from the overall experience. And you know me, I could always use some more faster and heavier parts to go with it. And I give it an 8 for innovation. I've been listening to this band for roughly 20 years now, and it's crazy to just say that out loud. But they've still managed to surprise me with fresh sounds and ideas to roll into their usual repertoire on this album. So 9 overall and an A- for Deftones Ohms. Get it once more via Reprise Records. Y'all, thanks as always for watching, and let me know what your favorite Deftones record is. And speaking of which, be sure to check out my Deftones tier list. Off the top of my head, I'd put this one pretty high up there, but you still just can't beat White Pony. And just stick around in general, because there's plenty more reviews coming right after this one, and also, again, tier lists, interviews with the bands on the podcast, you name it, we've got it. Plenty of reasons to subscribe once more if you have not already. Also in the description, you can find links to our social media, the email newsletter, our Patreon, and Subscribe Star if you want to take that extra jump to becoming a full-on supporter. Just $1 a month gets you early access to content and helps me keep this train a-rolling. And of course, metaltrenches.com, where you can find even more album reviews and content to check out. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.